God came to us to seek and to save that which was lost. He raised a man from among us. He, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, laid the foundation. What I'm doing is something that comes from him through me, and the thing that he uses in me to do the work is my faith in him and the word that he taught. To produce men and women who wanted to clean up their life and build an independent nation for the glory of God.
Welcome, brothers and sisters. Greetings. This is your brother Willie Muhammad with I Have a Testimony on National Network View. Today, our special guest is Brother Rashad. He's a researcher, student minister, a husband, a father, and he is a helper to the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan and our nation. Welcome, Brother Rashad.
Having me.
Man, we are honored to have you, brother. It's been something in the works for a long time. And, you know, prior to us doing this online, we were working in the plans of actually getting you here to come to the city. But hey, COVID ended up changing a lot of that. But it's a blessing, man, because we've been able to introduce more people to this series than those outside of our city who didn't know. So I'll get straight to our first question. I'd like to get right to it. You know, I've seen you rocking ascot on several occasions, right? And a few have been when you were performing, right? So I know you have a musical side of you. And in preparation for this interview, I discovered you come from a family where your mother was a songwriter for the historic Stax record, and your father was a sound engineer. So how big of a role did music play in your coming up in your household?
Oh, music. Next to God himself, music was probably secondary almost, but it was primarily gospel music, of course. And as you mentioned, my mother, before I was born, growing up, she was a recording artist and songwriter with Stax Records. This was in the 60s, mid to late 60s. And there she met my father, who was a sound engineer. And of course, they got married and had children. And this was before I was born. And it was as a result of my mother having my older brothers that she took a sabbatical from the music industry for a while. And just when she was supposed to get back into, say, the groove of things, she was actually supposed to be on that same flight with Otis Redding and certain members of the Barcade that ended up crashing. My mother, a few weeks prior, had to back out because she had some mother wifey things to take care of. So had she taken that flight, look, I would not be here talking to you today. So maybe that's a way to start off our little testimony. The fact that my mother, you know, decided not to take that flight that killed our great brother, Otis Redding, and certain members of the Barcades. In fact, it was Otis Redding who gave my mother her stage name. Her stage name when she was a recording artist with Stax is Wendy Renee. Of course, her real name was Mary Frierson or Mary Cross after she got married. But that's it's certainly an interesting story. And I didn't really know the depth of my mother or father and their music involvement until I was up in age. It had to be a teenager when back in the 90s, we heard a song. My older brother heard a song by the Wu-Tang Clan called Tears. And in that song, the whole chorus is actually a recording of my mother, one of her old songs called After Laughter Comes Tears. So it was then when my mother, I guess you could say, her music started to kind of resurface, so to speak. And since then, her music has been in all kinds of movies and commercials, and Alicia Keys redid one of my mother's songs. And so music was pretty big in my household, not just from my parents, but even my uncle. My uncle, my mother's brother, he was a recording artist for both Stax and High Records here in Memphis. High was where Al Green and Willie Mitchell was for. So my uncle, Johnny Frierson, when he recorded with High Records, he used his stage name, James Fry. And you can find a lot of his music sampled as well. I think Kanye, in one of his recent songs from this past year, has a chorus of a man singing, and that's my uncle right there. So by the time I came along, my parents, when my mother was pregnant with me, to be exact, my parents got saved and gave their life to the Lord. And it was when she was pregnant with me that they joined the church. And so everything that my parents did for Stax Records, they ended up doing it for the Lord later. My mother became an evangelist under the late Bishop G.E. Patterson of the Church of God in Christ. She was known as Evangelist Mary Cross. And my father, Deacon James Cross, it still works at the church. In fact, he was the late Bishop Patterson's road manager, and he still does sound engineering for the church. So I guess music is in me. I guess once I came into the nation at a young age, 18, 19, I didn't quite seek to pursue a career in music like I once did. You know, when you're young, I'm thinking I'm gonna go to Hollywood and be some big music or actor or even comedian of sorts. But a lot of that changed, and I started to prioritize a lot of my things, my thoughts, and my life for that matter. And I think that's what brought us to this point.
That's amazing. So I remember there was a movie out that was about some artist that actually died in a plane crash. Was that one with the brother who made la 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 bamba? Was he on that?
I don't think
too?
that was the same plane there. I don't think that was the same flight with the La Bamba. I forget his name. That was another.
Yeah.
But he too died in a plane crash. But Otis Redding, I think we all know Otis Redding.
Wow, sitting at the dock of the bay.
Oh, she may be weary. Don't get me started.
Man, we might have to get you to sing it. Our sister working the board, Sister Kenya, said that was Ricky Valens. Who man, that's some interesting history. Well, we may Allah be pleased with those who are on that plane. But we thankful, man, that didn't, your mother wasn't there, because we wouldn't have you and the great work that you're doing. Allah is definitely best knower. In preparation for this interview, I saw where you were voted in high school by your classmates as the most talented, right? So what talents did you display that helped you to earn that actual title?
Be honest with you, Brother Willie, I was a darn fool in high school. And in a silly sense, I was not bad in terms of like a thug or anything like that, but I was a class clown. And that's what I didn't mention. I was voted, yes, most talented, but I was also voted class clown because I was cutting up all the time. And I was just trying to have fun, doing me. And I guess the reason that I was considered most talented is because I was singing. I was singing in choir and in talent shows and in the hallways and all this kind of stuff. But I had a comedic side to me. I know that's hard to believe considering how refined and sophisticated I am now. But back in the day, I had a comedic side to me. And whether it was in the form of roasting, or as we call it here in Memphis, checking different people, or just, spare of the moment type of things. And I think for that type of those talents, along with my personality, I think I was a pretty cool dude to be around, to be honest with you. I kept people laughing, and people just kind of like being around me.
You still are that way right now. In the bio that I read, you mentioned that you were a class clown. I just decided to focus on the talented part. So in the bio, it also talked about how you served as a student government president at your local college for 2 terms. And, you know, to be effective in such a leadership position as that, one must be able to negotiate with people. You got to understand people and how they think and what are their interests and their dislikes, right? So what leadership strategies did you learn during that 2-term tenure in that position?
You know, all of that came so sudden. And I have to say this, Brother Willie, we never know what our life, what comes out of us based on the way of just attempting to follow and listen and take heed to the Honorable Minister Farrakhan. You would be surprised. Well, you wouldn't, but people would be surprised at what would come out of you, how God would bring things out of you that you never knew was there. I was a clown in high school. I failed high school 3 times. And I tell this story all the time. I had to literally go to summer school 3 summers in a row just so I could graduate on time. So I ended up going to college, and I barely made it to college, you know, barely made it. But once I was in college, and I started off at a community college, and it was at the same time that I became involved with the teachings. I started listening to the minister. I joined the Nation of Islam. And now those leadership qualities that were dormant in me, now they are starting to come out to the point where the people, these are not Muslims, these are other students who voted me as student government president over thousands of students at this particular college. And it was a learning experience because that was a setting that, for lack of a better term, it mimicked like a government, you know, where you have people that you respond to. You learn how to be a servant, you know, but at the same time, learn how to be disciplined. Because even as a student government president, I'm handling the budget of students, you know, and how and where this budget is to be allocated and at what times and for what purposes, and do these purposes justify, you know, the budget. So I'm learning things. I became part of then Congressman Harold Ford Jr.'s transitional team. I became politically involved, and it got to a point that as I was transferring from that community college to the University of Memphis, where I later graduated, I was actually voted to a position known as a student regent. This is where they had different student government presidents from the state of Tennessee, and the different student government presidents would vote for a student to be over all of the other colleges and students in the state of Tennessee. And I guess for whatever reason, I was impressive. I don't know that they voted me for that position, but it was a position that I never assumed. I never assumed it because I don't know. I just got into so many other things, but who knows? The leadership is something that I started to learn then, and I'm still learning every day, because we have the best example of servant leadership before us today. And I know I could go speak for hours on that, but I don't want to take up too much time. But needless to say, that was a wonderful experience that I'm thankful for. It was a learning experience because you learn how to deal with not just people who think like me or look like me, but now you have all of these diverse students that I am required to serve. And I think I did a pretty good job. The fact that I was elected twice, I think, is that.
Wow, that's something, you know, and you started to touch on it, and I'm glad you didn't go all the way in it. You know, I know you as a scholar, a student minister, a father, a husband, a brother. However, I've never really heard your journey to Islam in detail. So you talked about it when you were at the college campus. You said that's when you first came into contact with the teaching. So how did you become introduced to the teachings of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad?
Man, well, as I stated earlier, I grew up in a very Christian evangelical household. All we knew was the Lord. You hear me? In fact, if there was anything outside of the Lord Jesus Christ, my parents weren't hearing it, you know. But I always had an appreciation and love for the scriptures. I had and developed, thanks to my parents, a love for God, a love for Jesus, a love for the scriptures. And with an evangelical mother and parents, I learned just about all those major Bible stories. And I love them, you know, and I believe them. So it was later when I became a teenager that one of my older brothers ended up going off to college, and he came back claiming to be a Muslim. Boy, that must have shocked not only my family, it shocked the whole church. Now, we grew up in a big church, Bountiful Blessings, Temple of Deliverance, which at one point in time was pretty much, you could say, the headquarters of the Church of God in Christ, when Bishop Patterson was the presiding bishop over the Church of God in Christ. And it was during that time that my brother shocked the whole church because he became a Muslim. Now, we were a cross family. We're one of those staple families in the church. Mother's an evangelist, mother sings in the choir, father's a deacon. All of these boys that grew up in the church and they singing in the choir. Everybody loved the Cross family. And lo and behold, one of them Cross boys became a Muslim. So naturally that shocked the church, but it made me inquisitive. I was about 14 at the time. And my brother shared some things with me about Islam. So even at an early age, not even knowing all of the truth, I considered myself a Muslim. I was claiming to be a Muslim at 14 years of age. My brother even took me to a mosque. It was a Sunni mosque, and I took Shahada at 14 years of age, and I started telling everybody I was Muslim. You know, didn't bit more know anything about Islam, but I knew that I was a Muslim, and you couldn't tell me nothing.
That's amazing, man. And look at where you're here now, my brother. So, you know, in your studies, it's interesting. You go from a student that had to take several classes several times, summer school, barely made it to college, and now you are one of the foremost scholars within our nation. And your scholarship is not just limited to this area, but you have really focused in on one of the most controversial aspects of our theology, right? Which is the existence of the mother plane and the will. So can you explain to us why you focus on this particular aspect of the teachings of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad?
Absolutely. You know, ever since I came into the nation, especially down here in the South, in the Bible Belt, in the Memphis area, we would always have to defend our faith from everybody, whether it's from the perspective of a Christian and the biblical point of view, whether it's from the nationalists who don't believe in no God and this point of view, whether it's from an atheist, whether it's from a scientific point of view, whether it's from an academic. You know, it seems as though the Nation of Islam has always been the center of attacks. And for me, knowing that Allah revealed this truth to the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, at a certain point, we have to start defending it. So my quest in defending the teachings in general really took off in college, when I would get in debates with many of my professors. And based on what I was learning from the Nation of Islam, I would be literally whooping these professors with the truth. And that caught the eye of so many other students, to the point where they were like, man, I ain't never seen no nigga like you before. literally, because just following the minister, following the teachings, it brings the best out of you. So looking at the teachings, and one of those areas that it seemed like many people used to try to make mockery of back in the day, what had to do with our recognition that Almighty God Allah came in person, and with his coming, he brought evidence in the form of this huge circular plane, half a mile by half a mile, called the mother wheel, along with 1,500 accompanying smaller wheel-shaped crafts that we call baby planes or bomber planes. It is these planes that others have called UFOs that have caught the world by storm. But what people don't know is the fact that the Nation of Islam introduced this reality to the world. And since I would see how the enemy has always lied and twisted the truth and have used the UFO phenomena to try to divert attention away from the source of these crafts, I felt obligated as a defender, as a Muslim, as a believer, as a thinker, to showcase and prove that the Honorable Elijah Muhammad is 1,000% correct in the fact that he met God in person, and that God brought him and is responsible for that huge wheel and those 1,500 baby planes that the world now calls the UFO phenomena. We wanted to prove that the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan is 1,000% correct. And it is as a result of proving these points, out of proving that reality, that we now have world scholars afraid to deal with us. We have world scholars afraid to even engage in an intelligent dialogue on this topic, because it proves beyond doubt that Elijah Muhammad met God in person. It proves that the Honorable Minister Farrakhan is backed by that divine power, and we can prove it in no limited time in the real world with real facts and real evidence. So hell yeah, I felt compelled like a mug to come and showcase and prove this point.
Praise be to Allah. I've noticed that you have been invited on several shows by many leading voices in the quote unquote UFO phenomenon community. And I saw part of one of the interview you did with two Caucasians, which the image is going to come up as we go further, where they were basically fascinated by the Nation of Islam's position, right? Can you share with us what you have experienced of those, just of when you go on those shows, their responses to our explanation regarding the existence of these quote unquote whales?
Well, first of all, I think there have been only about 3 of those so-called big ufologists that have dared to even consider inviting us or me on their show. And that was one. Since we've had the book out, which was 2013, we've only had about 3, and naturally they are intrigued. They're intrigued because many of them have honestly been studying this thing for so many years, and they find out that so much truth has been deliberately kept from them. They'd had no idea that the Nation of Islam is responsible for the UFO phenomena. So naturally, especially as white people, they have a sense of, well, I don't believe that. But when the facts are presented, they have no choice but to believe it, you see? So this is why you'll find that many of those interviewers who were kind enough to engage us were so intrigued and overwhelmed by the truth of what God revealed to the Honorable Elijah Muhammad and what they have revealed to the Honorable Minister Farrakhan that it's really something. And I notice I don't seem to get invited back to these shows either.
That's amazing, man. But you definitely handled your own as it relates to that. So we're this you while you're on the guest today, you're also going to witness something new that we're adding. We're going to pause for a quick little commercial break, and then we're going to come right back, right? So for those who are actually watching, thank you for tuning in to the National Network View, and let us pause for these announcements.
Greetings. This is Tarika Shakir Muhammad with National Network View. This week's issue of the Final Call honors a servant, scholar, and soldier, Minister Abdul Allah Muhammad, and his life's work and contributions to the Nation of Islam and his sacrifices in the black struggle for freedom, justice, and equality. He was a follower of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad and the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. To read more about Student Minister Abdul Allah's life and legacy, subscribe to finalcalldigital.com. And thank you for tuning in to NNV News. Please share your thoughts with us in the comment section below, follow us on social media, and please subscribe to our YouTube channel, NNV News. This is Tarika Shakir Muhammad with NNVnews.com.
Be a part of the force that powers truth in journalism. Your support helps to combat false media. Cash App, NNV News.
Welcome back. Welcome back. This is your brother. I have a testimony, brother Willie Muhammad, and we have our special guest with us, brother Ilya Rashad Muhammad. Now, I got to say this, man, I love my team. I love those who are working behind the board right now, Sister Kenya and brother Musai. I hope I got it right. I saw you broke it down into the phonetics. Got you, my brother. And NNV, man. Thank you all. Thank you all. Thank you all. So as we get back with our guests, man, you are doing your thing, brother, and continue to do that. And like you said, they mocked and made fun of certain aspects of our teachers, but now we have the scholarship to actually bear witness to it. So my next question is, what has the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan shared with you in regarding your research? Not what he said as it relates to your book, but any guidance that he gave you to help guide your research and your study on this.
Yes. One of the first things that comes to mind, and this is direct guidance for my research and for all of our research, not just on the topic related to the wheel, but anytime we are dealing and undergoing a study, we always use the teachings of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad as the filter to filter out the truth from falsehood whenever we receive information. One thing the minister said to me, because he had reviewed the book and everything, and he loved it, and he saw one or two little things that I had in the book that I've changed since then. And he cautioned us and me to don't always look to them, the enemy, for as though they are the authority on a topic like this. He said, your job is not to explain what somebody else said or think they said or think they saw. Your job is to explain what he taught, talking about the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. You see, and that is so key. It seems so simple and plain, but that is so powerful. See, my job is not to find anybody that said they saw a UFO and try to take whatever they said as though that's law. Hell no. Our job is to explain and show that what the Honorable Elijah Muhammad teaches, what Allah revealed to him, is the absolute truth, and show how what they said or saw bears witness to what Allah revealed to him. So he is the center. What Allah revealed, the revelation, that's the center of everything we do. So that simple but wise guidance, it will last me for a lifetime. So remember, don't focus or don't try to explain what somebody else said. Your job is to explain what he taught. You know, I mean, that is so rich, and it applies not only to dealing with the reality of the will and that topic, that applies to everything, you know, because we look so quickly to the enemy and others as though they are experts on something that Allah has already revealed to us. You know, we are the authority when it comes to the so-called topic of UFOs. And this is why I call out any so-called UFO researcher. If you do not include Elijah Muhammad and the Nation of Islam in your so-called research, then you are already off the page. How the hell are you going to deny the very entity that introduced this topic to the world? You see? And that's the way the enemy does. That's how Satan works. Satan loves to control the narrative of everything that God has brought. He offers a substitute for everything that God brought, everything that Allah revealed to Elijah Muhammad. You will find that Satan has his narrative, his version, his substitute of it. Notice the concept of the will. Nobody can deny that this topic was brought to the modern world by the Nation of Islam. So instead of even dealing with it, the enemy is going to give and create a narrative about some damn aliens from outer space that you ain't never seen before. You see? And he has the people's minds already triggered to believe in a fictitious alien as opposed to the real life man and God that brought this to the world. Look at how the enemy takes everything the Nation of Islam has done and tries to claim it as his own and twist the narrative. You can't even read about Malcolm X, which was produced by the Nation of Islam, made by the Nation of Islam, taught, trained by the Nation of Islam. But no, the enemy gives you his version of Malcolm X. The enemy gives you his version of the bean pie. Look, so those guiding words from the minister, we better take that to the bank there, boy. Everything he says, every word he says, we should hold tightly to.
Praise be to Allah. And what advice, Brother Ilya Rashad, would you give to believers who may be believers and even those outside of our ranks that may be struggling with that aspect of our theology about the existence of the will? They may not fully understand it. You know, what advice would you give them?
Think. It's just that simple. You can't tell me that any thinking human being would disbelieve that people, human beings, can build planes that can fly in the sky. If you don't believe that people can build aircraft that can fly in the sky, then I don't think the problem is us, then you would be the problem. So all you have to do is think to accept the plain truth that the Honorable Elijah Muhammad brought and that Minister Farrakhan represents. We don't teach about no darn aliens coming. We're talking about human beings from this earth who just so happen to be more superior in their thinking than the white man that we're so accustomed to. We're talking about human beings from this earth who have made aircraft that happen to be superior to the conventional aircraft that we're accustomed to. So if you have a problem believing that people can make planes that fly in the sky, then you probably don't even need to be a part of this conversation. You see, we're taught that Islam is mathematics and mathematics is Islam. So many people find it difficult to accept the plain, logical, practical, real life, real world teachings of the Nation of Islam because they've become too accustomed to being too religiousized. I just made up a word. You look at things in such a spooky, non-logical, non-mathematical, non-realistic manner, especially growing up in religion in this world. So when the Nation of Islam comes with a plain truth that makes sense, that can be proven in the real world, we so spooked out in our religious mindset that we find it hard to believe in the plain truth. So what I would suggest to those who find difficulty in accepting what Allah revealed to the Honorable Elijah Muhammad and what Minister Farrakhan is conveying to us, just think. It's that simple. Think.
Simple and think. And what do you see as the significance of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan's more than a vision experience?
His more than a vision experience, where he has exclaimed to the public for several decades about his experience being taken aboard that wheel by way of one of the smaller wheels, where he spoke to the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, a man who is supposedly had died 10 years prior. But here Minister Farrakhan is having a direct conversation with the man, and the Honorable Elijah Muhammad gives him directives to share with the rest of the world and to tell the world that he got this information from Elijah Muhammad on the wheel. No one of intelligence should attempt to deny Minister Farrakhan's recognition and constant explaining and exclaiming of his experience on the wheel and talking to the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. The reason I say no one, because here's a man who, whether you like him or not, is an internationally respected figure. And for a man, a unique man of his character, who has withstood the level of attacks from the most powerful enemy on earth and still remains successful, for him to tell you that he is backed by a power greater than all of the power in this world, and he's had experiences on that wheel with that power, and spoke with Elijah Muhammad, and he tells the world, and everything he says renders true, we would look like fools to try to ignore and neglect that. And you know what? You will notice that his staunchest enemies, who are very powerful people, who have influence over media, social media, Hollywood, banking, finance, educational curricula, politics, lobbyists, international trade and commerce, his enemies have influence over all of that, yet you do not find where Farrakhan's staunchest enemies even attempt to critique or criticize his more than a vision-like experience. They don't deal with it, particularly those so-called members of the Jewish community. And the reason they don't deal with it is because those wise ones among them are very keen on the prophecies of the Hebrew scriptures, all of which tell us about a figure who heralds the age of God, known as the Messianic age, a figure known as Elijah, who is expected to return in the last days, and Elijah, who has a direct connection to God, and Elijah, this prophetic figure who is directly associated with God's heavenly vehicles, heavenly chariots that sweep him away, so that sweep Elijah away so that he can be with his man God. So the Jewish leaders, who are some of the staunchest enemies of Minister Farrakhan and the Nation of Islam, are very careful not to even bring up this piece. Now, you would think, as intelligence people, you would think that Minister Farrakhan proclaiming Elijah Muhammad is alive, after the whole world believes that he died on February 25th, 1975. Yet Minister Farrakhan takes the unpopular position and says that Elijah Muhammad is alive and he is on that wheel that's real. And you mean to tell me none of his enemies even deal with that issue? Oh, man. This is why it would warrant anyone of intelligence, especially among our spiritual leaders and teachers. It behooves you and us as people who read the scriptures and the prophecies to really study carefully and objectively what Minister Farrakhan represents and has been showing us and telling us of his vision-like experience and his direct connection to this wheel, and the fact that Elijah Muhammad is physically alive. And you will find that everything he says lines up 1000% with the prophecies that have been outlaid in the Quran and the Bible. This is why you don't want to deal with us.
Beautiful response.
Start preaching in a minute, man.
No, listen, man. It's all needed, you know, and I'm asking these questions to promote us to do what you said, to get us to think and to be able to create an avenue to help those who may not fully understand it or doubt it, to grow from being in doubt to being firm in belief. So that leads to my next question. What advice would you give to believers and even those outside of the ranks who may be struggling to understand the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan's more than a vision experience?
Well, along with thinking, we would have to study, because there are facts and valid information that substantiate what this man is saying. So if you just hear the man and you don't know the facts and the information and the reality that buttresses his position, then you would think it would be easy to just dismiss what he's saying. And that's the problem. So we understand that along with thinking, it does require some study. We have to be learned in this day and time. We have to be able to accept reason and facts and information and understand how to discern truth from falsehood and filter the information that we have and distinguish the truth from falsehoods. And so when we do that, and when we think objectively and study objectively, then you would likely come away with the same conclusion that you, Brother Willie, and I, and countless thousands of others have come up with. And that is that this man has to be backed by the supreme power of God. You know,
yes, sir.
So
thank you, my brother. We transition, since we're talking about the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. We know that you are a member of the NOI research group, and you know, which means that you all often have private settings and gatherings with the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan to discuss whatever he wants to be research or preparation for the lectures and things like that. Can you share with the audience the significance, would you see the significance of this group and how you became a member?
Wow. You know what? I probably couldn't tell you to this day how I became a member. All I know is I was doing my thing. Somehow the minister caught notice of what I was doing and what some of us was doing, and he asked us to help. And Lord knows that is the greatest honor that I could have on this earth, is to be a helper, is to be a servant to that man of God who is among us. Now, some of the backstory on becoming a member of the research team, I actually considered myself a part of the research team or research department before I ever so-called officially became a part of his team. And much of that is due to those great ones who came before us, like the great Minister Abdullah Muhammad, the great Minister Jibril Muhammad, our great mother Tainetta Muhammad, See, these type of people are the original research team. You see, they may not have been officially called that, but these are scholars. These are people who paved the way. These were like walking encyclopedias. These were people who were taught by the Honorable Elijah Muhammad and help of their brother, the Honorable Minister Farrakhan. And so the research team stands on the shoulders of people like them. And even me personally, I, along with Brother Dimitri, are very fortunate to have come up in a mosque under the tutelage of our brother, Minister Mutakir Muhammad, formerly known as Minister Anthony Muhammad, because Brother Mutakir is the type of brother who loves Minister Farrakhan so much that he wants to produce helpers for him. And his style in the ministry is such that he summoned people like me and Brother Dimitri and several others to learn how to help. Because one thing about Brother Mutakir, he has always been a very studious brother. He was a brother that I would say kind of revolutionized the introduction of PowerPoint into the Sunday lectures. He was doing that back in the late 90s, early 2000s. Very illustrious in terms of making sure that he would prove his point. So I came up under brothers like him, and as one of his assistants at an early age, when I came in the nation, I was do research for him. I would help craft and outline his lectures to, it came to a point where I was doing it so much that the brother would sometimes just let me outright craft his lectures, write his lectures, you know, and that says a lot from a brother who's already a brilliant teacher. So just about everything that I was already doing under the tutelage of Brother Mutakir, it was like just an easy avenue to do it for our father, the Honorable Minister Farrakhan. So that process is somewhat similar. When it comes to the minister, and this is interesting because this is kind of what takes place in some of those private settings. Understand this first. Everything is based on the revelation. The research comes after the revelation. You see, that's why you hear me in my little video clips always talk about how the research supports or verifies the revelation that has already been revealed. What Minister Farrakhan represents is revelation. And when he shares that revelation, it behooves us as researchers to show how that revelation is vindicated, how that revelation is validated with empirical data, with historical evidence, with scientific evidence, you see? So everything starts again with the revelation. So this is the utmost honor. And I could not tell you honestly how I got to be in such a setting and position to sit at the feet of Allah's servant and Messiah, knowing that there are several others that's way smarter than me, several others who have sacrificed way more than me, several others who have done more and just so much worthy. I mean, how I got there, I could not tell you. I'm just so thankful that Allah allowed him to choose me, you know.
And we are thankful as well, my brother. And as you think about and reflect on your time in that space with the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, being a part of that very historic group, what are two of the most profound lessons you have learned from working with the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan as a part of the NOI research group?
One thing, and I kind of alluded to this earlier, see, the minister, He's all about Elijah Muhammad. Everything. You know, that's not no damn show. He loves that man. He loves the God who made that man for him and for us. I've never witnessed love like that. And that's the root of everything he does is love. This is why it's so hard for people to understand the minister. It's hard for even some of us to understand him because we've never known anyone who loves like him before. He embodies the love of God. So his love for the messenger, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, it permeates through everything, you see. And this is why he's able to do what he does and be successful at it. At the root is love. So one thing that he's taught us, all of us, that we still trying to catch on is how to love like him, you know, and that's a hell of a process. That's a heck of a process. So everything he does, he puts what Allah revealed to the Honorable Elijah Muhammad first and foremost. We are the research team, and yes, we bring data, we bring all kind of aggregated research to him and present it to him. But look, if it don't corroborate with what Elijah Muhammad said, minister ain't trying to hear that. Everything he does is based on what Allah reveals to him. And I'll tell you something else, you know, I was blessed, and I think, you know, my wife and I were blessed to be with him a few weeks ago. And one thing he shared with us is that he said, you know, brother, a lot of people think that a lot of the stuff I say is, you know, like I fully know and understand everything. Like, he says, so often Allah makes me say stuff. He said, it's scary, brother. He said, it's scary. He says, sometimes Allah will put words in my mouth and have me to say it, and I don't understand it. He said, I might not understand it until sometimes days later. It may be late in the night, and then it comes to me. You know, when he shared things about even during the Criterion address, there were some things that he said that was not planned. Believe me, we were blessed to meet with him about a few weeks prior to that to try to get some thoughts and things together for this address. And some of which he stated, but there was some other stuff that came out of nowhere, it seemed. Telling you, Allah, he is the instrument of God. And Allah uses him and makes him to say things. And the things that Allah calls him to say, we see now that it's having effects all over the world. You know? So I guess I was saying this sounds kind of generic almost. Yeah, I think you said two things to take away. This sounds generic.
No, you hit on two things. You hit on it. It's not generic at all, man.
But that love piece, and I'm telling you, the man seems unreal. And the reason, again, is because we've never seen that kind of love demonstrated before. So we truly don't know what real love looks like. So when we see it in action, embodied in a man, it looks almost strange, you know. I'm talking even to us. We know where, I mean, you see in the scriptures where this Jesus is always forgiving people that's done him wrong and forgive them, Father, for they know not what they do and all of this, man. We've seen how our people, how the minister just shows love to them, and they've just, golly, you know, talk bad about the minister. And, you know, naturally, those of us who love the minister, you're not going to tolerate that kind of stuff coming from somebody. You know, we literally want to do some real damage to people like that. That's our nature. That's our love for him. But we see how he's handled people, and his way is the best way, because in many, many of those cases, his love literally overpowered their hate for him. And he ended up winning those people. you
That's
know.
true.
So
Beautiful. And that's what many people testify that when they are asked similar questions. My next question is, I know, as I said earlier, you're a man of many talents, and one of them is your ability to harvest bees, right? And so can you explain what led you to get involved in this endeavor?
absolutely. It started with me getting involved several years ago with gardening. Now, I'm a straight city boy. I grew up here in Memphis with no real experience in gardening other than seeing my grandmother and my mother do a little something in the backyard every now and then. But the minister has always shared with us what the Honorable Elijah Muhammad shared, which is the importance of land, both land acquisition and land development and usage. For land is indeed the basis of freedom. So, in my starting and experimenting with gardening for a few years, that developed into several gardens and me acquiring some vacant lots where we would plant fruit and vegetables and fruit trees and whatnot. But anybody who's into gardening understands that the bees, honeybees in particular, are vitally necessary. After all, 1/3 of every bite of food we put in our mouth is a direct result of the bees who pollinate the crops so that the fruit and the vegetables can grow properly. So we would not have a, a an abundant earth to feed off of were it not for God's little engineers called the bees. These creatures are so spectacular and phenomenal that even the God names a whole chapter in the Holy Quran after this particular creature. And he lets us know that there are lessons that we are to learn and extract from this creature. There are treasures laden within this creature that we can obtain if we know how to unlock the value of creatures like this. The Bible even says in several references, it speaks of God's kingdom or the promised land as a land flowing with milk and honey. So as I started to understand the value and necessity of these creatures called the bees, I was compelled to become a beekeeper. And in my mind, I'm thinking like, man, why isn't everybody else doing this? You know, because I'm not the type of dude, anybody that knows me, first of all, they know I'm wasn't the type of dude to just get in the dirt and start planting stuff. So that surprised a lot of people. So, people were surprised when I got into beekeeping. And I'm telling you, there's so many joys and abundances that come with this, that, I mean, in order for humanity to thrive as we all want, the bee plays a vital role in that, because if they die, we die. And that's one of the reasons why not only am I into beekeeping and honey, and the minister and the minister's family, the Farrakhan family, are some of my greatest encouragers and supporters when it comes to this whole beekeeping thing. And I thank Allah for his family and him, of course. But we have got to a point now where we're following the minister's directives. He told me that we should take these type of practices, these good practices, and share them all around the country. Well, I think that the conditions now warrant that people have to get into these practices that allow us to live sustainably, that allow us to do something for ourselves and grow our own food. And the bee is essential to that. So this is why, come in a few weeks, we're literally going to be launching an online beekeepers course, a beginner beekeepers course that we're going to make available. So there are going to be some announcements for that. In fact, if there are people listening to this now and you think you might be interested in knowing something about how you could become a beginner beekeeper and have a beehive in your backyard, or extract honey you might want to go to our website at nationbrothers.com and just go to the contact us form and fill out, give us your email. And in the comment section, just put beekeeping, and we'll be able to send you some information on our upcoming online beekeeping course. And that's going to be big, y'all, because that's something that people have inquired about. And so now we're making it available. So again, go to nationbrothers.com, go to the contact us form, and in the contact us form, just give us your name and email and type beekeeping in the comments. And so I'm excited about that, because that's a fulfillment of one of the directives that we were given by the minister.
Praise be to Allah. My next question, still dealing with the bees. You know, you kind of touched on it briefly, but I want to go back in depth in it. Allah in the Holy Quran and the Bible speaks about how if we are humble enough, we can learn from the law forms that exist on the planet Earth, and even the largest bodies that exist in the universe, the sun, the moon, and the stars, right? If we study them. So what is like one like thing that you have learned from harvesting bees that we can extract a principle from and apply it in our own lives?
Man, it's so difficult to focus on one thing. Let me try to generalize it. One thing is that the bees give us so many principles of nation building. The bees have one of the most organized communal structures in creation, the honeybee in particular. Honeybees are what are called eusocial creatures. Eusocial is a scientific term that really means truly social. They are truly social, and they're only like 3 or 4 other creatures that are considered truly social, ants and maybe termites or something, I don't know. But they're truly social in that everything they do is for the good of the whole. They are some of the most selfless creatures. And everything that the honeybees do, they do it for the good of the nation, of the colony, of the hive. So yes, they all have their individual roles, and those roles can change over the course of their short life. But all of their roles, all of their functions work together for the good of the whole. And I'll tell you, another thing we can learn from the bee is that they are producers and they are protectors. The honeybee goes outside of the hive, goes into the world to extract resources, honey or nectar and pollen and water and resin. The honeybee goes outside of its hive into the world to extract resources from the world to bring back to the hive to build their own infrastructure. The honeybee is not a beggar. The honeybee is a doer. And we can learn so much from that. The honeybee doesn't ask somebody to, for voting rights and none of that stuff. The honeybee has its own mechanisms of self-defense. And if you ever want to find out, well, you probably don't want to find out how bees can defend, but it's certainly a principle that we can learn from. So these are creatures, man. There's so many lessons in this divine creature.
What has been the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan's response to your work with dealing with bees, or harvesting the bees?
As I've stated, he is one of the greatest encouragers and supporters. Ever since he found out I was doing this, I mean, he's just made over what we are doing. And again, he's one of the main reasons that inspired us to go ahead with this online beekeeping course, because these are practices that make us productive. Because, let me share this. Even recently, when my wife and I were blessed to be with the minister in a very intimate setting, we were talking about bees. We spent hours talking about bees. That should let you know something of the value of this thing. And we brought up how interesting it is that the scriptures speak of a land of milk and honey, and both milk and honey come from the female bee and the female cattle. And the only way that you can get the honey or the milk is if you work to bring out what these creatures have for us, which takes study, it takes skill, it takes effort, it takes practice, it takes love. And he likened it. He mentioned that, you know, it's a sign of what we have to do with Allah's creation and each other. See, we have to work at bringing out the best in each other. And he says that's why so many relationships don't last, because we give up too easy. He said, you know what, brother, in truth, there's really no reason for a divorce. You hear me? He says, really, no real reason for a divorce. We just give up so easy. We give up on the process of bringing out and extracting the treasures that are in each other, because it is a hell of a process now. So whether it's looking at bringing out the best of God's creation, the insects, the cattle, the bees, or in each other, in relationships, in marriages, in brother to brother relationships, and sister, mother, father, we have an issue when it comes to bringing out the best in each other, because that's a process that we've never known before. But I'm reminded somewhere in our lessons, it talks about us solving a whole lot of these different problems, and that rewards would be given to the best and neatest workers of these problems. Well, life presents us with certainly a whole lot of problems. But what's the methods? What's the steps? What's the approach that we use to solve these problems? Well, we've been given some keys. We've been given some steps. Now it's up to us to take those steps and practice and go through that difficult process of bringing out the best in ourselves first and foremost, and then we can bring out the best in each other, much like how we bring out the honey from the bees, much like how we bring out the milk from the cattle. There's a whole lot of work that goes into that, but we love the benefit and the rewards that they give us, which is huge.
Beautiful. Beautiful. You just gave me something to go and study some more on, man, as that relates to that whole the milk coming from the female cow, and then the honey from the female bee. This is our last question. I want you to think about this, because the title of this show is I Have a Testimony. And the purpose of this show is, of course, to inspire personal testimonies about the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan that can help others gain a better understanding of him. You know, we used to open up the show, I would read the minister's quote where he would say how he was writing George Bush. And he said, I'm writing you from a prison, not a prison of bars, but a prison of false propaganda, right? And you know, with a testimony, it can convict somebody or it can free somebody from being convicted. So if you had to testify before the world about 3 qualities of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan that will help people gain a better understanding of who he is as the man, right? Mm-hmm. And that would even improve their lives when, after hearing about these 3 qualities, what qualities would they be and why?
Certainly. Well, that first one, I'm going to say it's love, you know, and he is truly the embodiment of love. Outside of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad, we have not witnessed anyone who has truly demonstrated. We're not just saying what somebody says, but we have not witnessed where somebody has demonstrated their love for our people like the Honorable Minister Farrakhan. There's that scripture, greater love has no man except he lay down his life for a friend. Minister Farrakhan, more so than anybody else, has been on the front line of defending our people and protecting us against the arch deceiver, against the synagogue of Satan. Many of our people don't even know who or what their enemy is. They don't even know anything about synagogue of Satan. They think Satan is some spook living underground with some red pantyhose and some horns and a pitchfork. But Minister Farrakhan has not only exposed the real world Satan, but he, more than anybody else, has challenged this satanic body. And he has disrupted their global plans against God's people and against humanity. It's Minister Farrakhan, more so than any other voice, who has really disturbed and disrupted Satan's plans to vaccinate the whole world. They already had that plan anyway, and they were going to try to use the pandemic as a way to forward it. But when Minister Farrakhan gave that criterion message that went before the world, put another pin, another dent in Satan's plan. Now you got to constantly reshift and try to come up with something different. So his love is unparalleled. So love is one thing, and really love is all encompassing. You know, you don't have to say three, but there's some other sub things that he's done about him that we can certainly testify of, because his love is what caused him to open the blind eyes, that caused the deaf to hear and the dumb to speak. You're looking at a living witness and testifying that. Yes, in the school system, yeah, 3 times. But that same dude that failed 3 times and failed English at that is the same dude that's now teaching English, teaching literacy, teaching folks how to read, you know, in ways that I was never taught in school. The same brother who failed, was a failure at English in the devil's world, is now writing books on behalf of the Honorable Minister Farrakhan that has world scholars running for cover. That's the sign of the power of a real savior. So you talk about testifying. Look, man, our lives serve as testimonies of his greatness. When you look at those, nobody can cause the blind to see the way Minister Farrakhan is. That people doing some great things. We're not taking anything away from these other leaders and other teachers and other people who have done and continue to do great things. But none catches the attention even of the great arch deceiver like that of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. This is why the enemy puts more focus on trying to silence his voice more than anybody else. You don't find any other leader of his stature who has been so-called censored by the American Senate, the most powerful legislative body in the world. You don't know anybody else who for decades, since the 50s, has been monitored and surveilled by the FBI and the government to no avail. You don't know anybody else who has been able to withstand the wiles of Satan the way that Minister Farrakhan does, and he does it all without a single weapon, nothing but the weapon of truth. Look, this is the kind of stuff that you just can't deny. You can't overlook that and claim that you are a truly good person or a good citizen. How can we claim to be leaders or even educators if we don't take heed to the man who on several occasions brought millions of our people together without one fight, not one argument, not one altercation? And you got over 1 million Black men in the largest demonstration of Black unity and peace that the world has ever seen. You mean to tell me that you have a school and you can't go a day without fights breaking out in the school, but you don't want to listen to the man who has done this before the world? unparalleled. No, let's humble ourselves and start to look to the man that has the clear solutions for our salvation. So in truth, I don't want to, sound harsh, but in truth, we would be foolish as hell if we don't take heed to what God has given the Honorable Minister Farrakhan.
Thank you, my brother. And we thank you for the time that you spent with us today. And I've learned more about you. And now when I listen to that tear song, in fact, I heard Charlemagne the God when they were asking like what's, I think one of their best Wu-Tang Clan songs, and that song Tears. I was like, I never heard that. And I went and listened to it. Now when I listen to it, I have a deeper connection to it because I'll think more about you. Brother, thank you for the work that you're doing. Thank you for everything that you shared. Once we get this uploaded on YouTube, I'll make sure you can see the clip. If you have the opportunity to go back and watch it, I know some of us don't go back and watch our interviews, but the people are loving your comments. It's flowing. This is people are tuning in. And I thank you for your testimony. And for all of those who are here working with us, I got to give a shout out because you all see me, but there's a lot that goes into this. Special shout out to NNV. Special shout out to our sister Kenya. Special shout out to our brother Musai. I got his name right. It takes me a while with names. Thank you, my brother. And thank you again, brother Ilya Rashad. And now we're going to go to our closing slides and we'll get right down to it. So listen, for those who, if you can help us, the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad teaches that debt is slavery. And we're in the process of wanting to burn our mortgage here in the city of New Orleans. So if you can be so kind to just give us a donation, or you can ask people to give a donation, you can give it via Cash App. Our website has been hacked and is down temporarily, but you can reach out to us and we can give you some other ways that you can give if you don't want to use the Cash App as well. And then the next thing I want to do is that we have a prayer group in our city where we submit the names of believers and not even people that's not even in our mosque, that if you're going through something, you need somebody to lift your name up in prayer, send us your information, send us your name. You can reach out to me on social media. You can follow us on IG, on Instagram, our mosque page and whatever, just to get with us and let us know. So that's another thing. And lastly, we have another special show. This is a brother who is so dear to me, our brother Captain Emeritus, brother Captain Dennis Muhammad, who is a trainer of men, who the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan say that he's more than a captain, but he is a general. So we want to give a tribute to our brother. And people's like, man, is everything all right with Brother Captain? Why are we doing this? And which shows that we have to do a better job of giving tribute to those who have given and sacrificed their lives for our nation. We don't always have to give people a tribute because something is wrong with them. Allah put this on my heart, and to help us do so, we have our brother Norman. We have our brother Khalil. We have the great brother Ben X and our brother Waliullah, who's going to all be participating in this tribute, inshallah, on January the 3rd, here at this time, 1 p.m. Central Standard Time. Please tune in, and we'll begin to start sharing the flyer. Please tune in. You do not want to miss this very powerful tribute that we're going to do. So thank you, brothers and sisters, for tuning in to another episode of I Have a Testimony. Please share your thoughts with us in the comment section below. Follow us on social media. Follow NNV on social media. This is your brother Willie Muhammad with National Network View. Peace.